Alright, I suppose we can get started here. Hello there. I'm EnviroBoy. This is my channel. I'm here with... You can't really see her. You can see her tail. My cat's here. She desperately wants to be very near right now. Which is adorable. If a little inconvenient, but that's okay. We forgive her because she's cute. Animals always seem to get away with that, don't they? Alright, I gotta just like scooch in a bit. There we go. Perfect. There. I know, honey. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. I know I largely am. Been a quiet Friday for me, which is honestly a pretty good Friday, all things considered. I'm pretty a-okay with that. I like a nice chill Friday. I mean, I like a nice chill every day. It doesn't have to be a Friday for me to want it to be nice and chill. That's my preferred speed, I guess. So, I don't know. I'm having a good day. Hopefully everyone else is doing the same. At least as good a day as they can have on a weekday, a work day. But we are going to finally get back to doing a little writing. Haven't written most of this week. Last time I wrote was it would have been Monday, and then life happened, and life got busy between work and family stuff, but I managed to somehow survive it all and get through it all, and I'm here, and boy oh boy, I really want to get some writing in. So let's go ahead and get ourselves over to our proper screen here. There we are. And just get going with it, right? There's no reason to sit here and talk about wanting to do it. Let's just do it. So we're gonna work today on our campaign project. We have an ongoing campaign that I've been slowly chipping away at and kind of demonstrating my process since the very beginning of it, honestly, actually. And we're kind of at about a halfway point, and for a campaign that covers 10 levels worth of stuff for our players, that's a pretty substantial achievement to already be halfway through. My hope is to be completely done with this campaign by the end of the year, which I know for some people, depending on your writing process and how detailed you get about things, might seem like quite a long time for writing just a single campaign. But for me, anyone who's watched and knows what my process is knows that I am very intensive and detailed about how I approach my writing. So the fact that we're halfway through and should be able to finish by the end of the year makes me feel pretty accomplished. I'm pretty happy about that. That's a good pace. It's a really good pace. So what we've done, or with the campaign that we've written so far, I'll just give a quick rundown of it, just so that we, for posterity, for anyone, particularly for anyone watching the VODs trying to catch up, they can just sort of hopefully kind of drop into any of them rather than having to watch it has to be hundreds of hours of VODs that I have of this, since I just put all of the full replay up on YouTube. It has to be hundreds of hours at this point in time. So just so people don't have to watch all of that to get caught up on what we're working on. This campaign takes place in an entirely homebrew world that I've created. It's a world that I've been working on for better part of a decade, if not flat out a decade at this point in time. It's generally whenever I want to do any creative writing in a fantasy setting, this world is the world that I default to and play with. And it's very dear to me, and I'm inviting you all in to it to enjoy it and the writing process with me. So it all takes place in this homebrew world called Zeoria. The nature of this world is that it is a post-apocalyptic kind of world. I mean, it is post-apocalyptic, but not in the sort of sci-fi sense we usually think about it, right? It's a fantasy version of that. And the best way to describe it is, there was an event called the Unhinging, right? And so let's imagine that we've got a fantasy world with all the different realms of, elemental planes, philosophical planes, ethereal, all that kind of stuff. And suppose all of those are organized like a jar of water and sand and rocks and oil and all kinds of different things that, as you let them sit, will eventually percolate into separate layers, right? And sort of that elementary school science experiment to show you the different concepts of densities and stuff. So imagine it's all organized like that. Now imagine you take that jar and you shake it up so that all of the layers are now mixed up and messed up and just all over the place, right? That's what the unhinging was. So we're left with this world, this existence, this multi-planar existence where all of the planes are just kind of disrupted and intermingled. And what that caused was a lot of tears in reality, tears in the mortal plane that allowed a lot of strange magical radiation to enter the world, as well as a whole lot of bizarro magical creatures. Some of them are just flat out creatures from other realms that have entered the mortal plane, and some of them are weird creations as a result of all of this magical radiation, as I like to call it, that took place in this world. So that's the state of our world. That event took place a couple thousand years ago, from the timeline that I usually write everything. And I set this up as primarily a way to establish a world in which there would be a lot of abandoned, forgotten cultures and cities and everything like that, which to me are some of the most fun places for players to sort of explore and learn about and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of sets up this really cool world that has a lot of very interesting and unknown places of mystery, and gives us sort of an excuse for our players to have a lot of exploring to do. So that's the world that we have. Now the campaign that we're working on takes place within this hex right here. And I chose this hex because it has a lot of different terrains for us to play with. We've got some forest terrain, some mountain terrain, and some plains terrain. And so it gives us just a wide variety of stuff to do. And it's been fun working in that. So that's kind of where it takes place, and we have our map right here, and this is sort of the region. Hey, Live and Let's Die, how's it going? Let's see, going well for me, thank you. Is there a catalyst for the plane merge? Important issue players can research and find out. So I've always imagined, so this is actually something that I haven't really fleshed out as to why it happened. I've always kind of imagined a few different theories, and there's one that I'm kind of most attached to, but I've never taken the time to flesh it out. I kind of view that as sort of a Tom Bombadil type of situation where even I don't really understand that part of the world, and I kind of like it that way. I kind of like that there's a certain amount of mystery to it, even for me. Like I say, I kind of have one thing that I'm most attached to, and to me that has to do with perhaps there existing one sort of overarching power that holds dominion over every realm, every plane, and somewhere some creature got too bold and too close to this creature and tried to usurp that creature, and that creature as a result did the whole like in the Bible, when the humans built the tower to God, and God was all like, and sort of scattered the people and changed the languages and stuff. This being sort of had his own version of like, oh, no, you do not get to presume this, and proceeded to just shake everything up just for the sake of messing with everyone and ruining whatever plans of power grab had been had. And that's sort of the idea that I've always sort of imagined is what caused it, but I've never really taken the time to flesh it out, because I actually kind of like the idea of this being something that is just indescribable. Like, it cannot be comprehended, it cannot be figured out, because it exists within, because even when we think about other planes, we can sort of comprehend that concept, and I've always imagined this creature's even beyond that, something else even beyond that. And I actually even so I have here, we're going to get really deep in the weeds of my creative processes and all that stuff. I have this fantasy world that I have, but I also have a sci-fi universe that I like to write in when I'm in more of a sci-fi creative space in life. I've been working primarily on my fantasy stuff for a long time, and I've been having a lot of fun with that, and I stick with it. But when I'm in a more sci-fi state of mind, I have a universe, and this world exists within that universe, and this universe is just so full of all kinds of different things, and the universe has creatures like that, and it's not like a singular one, it's multiple creatures that exist within this universe. And so I kind of always imagined it was something along those lines that happened. But again, I like to have it not be fleshed out, because I think that offers up two opportunities. One is it offers up a lot of freedom for me to sort of throw in things that might not necessarily jive with something. If I had a concrete, beginning of existence story or something like that, I can be more creative with that. It just gives me a bit of wiggle room. And the other reason that I really like it is, if I ever decide I want my players to investigate that, it gives a lot of room for yes and for them to just sort of like concoct their own grand, like what is within their collective imagination the largest, most amazing, untouchable thing, and I can just be like, yes, sure, why not, and like let them have that story. So yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I actually really like the idea of there being parts of a world that are just not understandable even by me as the creator of this world. Exactly like you're saying. Yeah, it gives players an idea of a cool theory. And the other thing about it too that I like is it presents the opportunity for perhaps there are multiple different origin stories. Bye, kitty. Are you gonna take off, or are you just gonna stand awkwardly and like threaten to smack me with your tail? Oh, there we go. But yeah, no, I also like the idea of it being possible for there to be multiple origin stories, right? Like perhaps there's a couple different stories that are like different levels of true and false and all that kind of stuff. It just presents a lot of creative freedom to not have a definitive answer for that one. Most of the timeline within the mortal realm is very definitive, and I like having that part of it be very definitive and very clearly thought out, because that gives me a lot of ways to do a lot of finite information for players to discover as they're going through and exploring whatever part of the world that I have. But on a much larger, ethereal, philosophical level, I like things to be sort of opaque and undefined. But that's kind of like a personal taste thing too. Like I don't even know that I have a good reason for it beyond just I like it. Because there's, for every reason that there is to do that, for every beneficial reason there is to do it that way, there are just as many reasons to, have a defined origin story and have you as the author know every single detail, right? I think there are benefits to either way, and it just kind of comes down to whatever the individual author likes. Let's see here. Perspective, experience it that way. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's fun to imagine that perhaps, like, all of these different, fantasy cultures have a certain level of truth to it. And like I say, I think there's kind of an interesting thing about it too, is like maybe all of them are exactly true. And the nature of the origin is that everything was so tumultuous that it can't, like, there isn't a definitive yes or no. Everything was just such a maelstrom of mortal and immortal and elemental and, ethereal and all of that stuff and material. All that stuff was just such a chaotic maelstrom that the collective birth of it is like this weird thing that bends and defies time, where the birth of the universe was the result of the imaginations of future beings or something like that. Like, maybe it's that weird and impossible to understand, right? And it's like something that we can't even comprehend as we're like writing this fiction, and that's what kind of makes it fun, is to sort of establish this history that is unknowable. And it's like maybe that is the answer, is that all of them are correct because time is not linear within, a certain state of existence, so that the creation depends upon what was created, right? And it's this weird infinite loop of not having a chicken or an egg, but rather one begets the other, like permanently and ongoing. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, and I love it that way. I love it that way. But no, that's a good question, because it's just sort of like a nebulous thought that I always have of like, what caused this versus, how are things, what caused the unhinging, how did things come to be, and all that kind of stuff, so Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad that you like those theories. That's like, I mean, I guess I would say that that's kind of why I'm here too, right? The fun of discussing and sharing these ideas is why I bother to stream my writing, because it's like if I only ever wanted to just be productive and get stuff done, then boy, oh boy, streaming it is sure a counterproductive part of that, because it takes time to set up, and then I sit here and answer questions rather than just write. But like that's no, I'm with you. That's like the fun of it. That's the fun of it. So I appreciate that you enjoy it as well. But yeah, there's a whole lot of interesting things, and maybe one day I will try and flesh out something like that. But I don't know. I like it. At the moment, I like it being unclear how all of that came to be. And like I say, I think a lot of the reason I like that kind of stuff is because, when I was younger, a lot younger, I say a lot younger as if I'm old. I'm still a pretty young guy. But when I was first getting into world building as a hobby, right, I really looked into, there were two like really big influences. There's of course Tolkien, who was like one of the pioneers of world building in general. Well, I guess I shouldn't say pioneers, but he's like one of the modern pioneers, maybe is a better way to put it. But him, and then the Myst games and all that kind of stuff. And so like when I was first kind of paying attention to that stuff and was curious about Tom Bombadil because he was such a strange creature of existence within within the D&D world. That's what I'm trying to say. Jeez, Pete's, my words were just getting confused there. I was so curious about him, and like I did some research, and Tolkien himself was like, I don't really know what Tom Bombadil is. He's just kind of this guy that's here, and it's an interesting concept for him to be here. And I was like, that's really cool. That's really cool that an author would be like, yeah, I just had this idea for something that would be cool if it existed, but I don't really know where it comes from or where it goes. It's just kind of there. So DMing, yeah, DMing does kind of make you old in a certain mindset, in a lot of ways, like both in sort of a ponderous way, particularly like world building type of DMing. There's like this sort of ponderous, how does the world come to be? What is the world? What is, and like all of those like increasingly simple yet complicated questions, as well as also it just makes you old in the sense of you grow up and learn how to manage people who act like children, because players inevitably become murder hobo children. So you have to learn how to wrangle them too. So it definitely ages your perspective in a certain way. I think that's a really good way to put it. That's why I love it so much. That's what's so fun about all this stuff. But yeah, no, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that, because it's fun to talk about. It's fun to talk about, and it makes me feel cool. So anyway, just to finish our recap of what we've done with our campaign so far, here's our map of the region that this is all taking place in. The basic premise of this one is that, so as we're in this state of post-unhinging life, couple thousand years after the event itself happened, that, I talked about those layers of existence and how it all got shook up. Well, now it's like all starting to percolate back into its separate layers, right? And so things are becoming a bit more manageable, and there's a lot of efforts within the different humanoid cities that managed to survive all of that, to start reclaiming parts of the world. And so within our campaign, part of those efforts are to establish a new trade route between two cities that previously you'd have to take a multi-month journey going, stopping at like 3 other cities on the way to get to it. But now there's this effort to make a direct line, basically as the crow flies, to try and connect the two cities, right? They're trying to establish a new trade route, and it's challenging but possible as things are slowly starting to calm down and the wilds are becoming a bit more approachable. So our players are going to be part of that effort, and they've made it to about here, in our Goldenwind Plains, when they find out that it turns out the Goldenwind Plains are the dominion of a dragon, a metallic dragon. So the dragon being a fair one, metallic dragons trend towards the good side of the spectrum. It doesn't kill them on sight, and instead just says like, oi, all you humanoids, I've looked into the history of all you guys, and I've watched some of your, from afar, some of your cities. you guys tend to cause a lot of conflict and you cause a lot of damage to environments. And I don't really want that going on in my Goldwind Plains, so best shove off. To which naturally the people are going to say, like, well, we're really just trying to do this so we can get a trade route going so we can survive too. Is there any way we can cut a deal with you and be able to do this trade route and like only have a trade route or something like that? And the dragon thinks about it a little bit and says, like, all right, well, here, how about this? There's this Hall of Wisdom that I've been trying to get into. Presumably there's some sort of object in there that will grant me the ability to see how events of the past have turned out. And perhaps if I can use that as a way to sort of help determine and oversee my dominion, if you guys help me get that so that I can oversee it and not let mistakes of the past happen here, I'll let you make your trade route. And so our players, being the good little adventurers that are willing to answer the call to adventure, as one must do to have an adventure, they'll say, like, okay, we gotta find some keys to let them in there, because it's all magically and physically locked up, and the dragon just doesn't have time to search for keys all willy-nilly. So our players go back, do a little bit of research. They've got a small city established here that's really just it's meant to be a sort of resupply stop, so that way they don't have to travel all the way back up to the city that's like a month north now. They can just kind of travel a couple days over here and resupply. They'll probably do another one further down, yada yada. They go back here, do a little bit of research, find out that one of the keys exists up, or was hidden up in the mountain peaks among all of the giant societies. So they go there, they have some adventures with giants, eventually find that key. Hooray! Go back to the city, a little bit more research. Then the next key that they'll find is that it was held with the dwarves down in the city of in their now abandoned city of Cogdoral. Cogdoral had to be abandoned in the early days of the unhinging because there were some pretty particularly tumultuous times down inside the mountains. Already nasty creatures that live underground were turned even nastier by all of the magical radiation, all that kind of stuff. So the dwarves just fled. They just flat out abandoned that city and fled. So our players go there, assuming it'll be an empty city, find out that it's run by Duragar. They can do what they want with that. We've sort of established already some different courses of action, whether they choose to sneak around, be confrontational, or try to be, friendly with them. Any which way they choose to go about it, they're eventually going to learn that the next key was stashed within the Dwarven treasure vaults of Cogdoral. And we can kind of zoom in a little bit here, right? We can get ourselves in here. We've got our city, Cogdoral, and there's the vaults of Cogdoral. So that's what we're working on right now, is our next step, which is them making the trek to the vaults of Cogdoral so that they can find this next key. And that's what we've been working on, and that pretty much catches us up to speed. We have our dungeon map here. Dungeon map. So the way I organize things oftentimes is I call them dungeons, but it's almost better to think about them as just being like chapters, right? So this is chapter 5 of the story rather than dungeon number 5, because there's a whole lot of different things that take place here. We have 5 different sets of rooms here. We have stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So stage 1... When they get to Cogdoral, they find out that the Duragar just weren't numerous enough to hold the entire city, so they kind of walled off a smaller section of the city and left the rest of the city to just kind of be the domain of all of the nasty creatures within the mountains. So the first thing is for them to go through those city outskirts that have been abandoned by the Duragar and are overrun by a whole lot of nasty creatures. The first part of that being just sort of like a sort of city center galleria type of shopping center thing for them to go and explore, and that's been kind of fun. That was fun to make up. And then the next part of it is going to be a Dwarven Suburb, where there's just a whole lot of Dwarven households, and I just sort of imagined this weird like honeycombed type of tunnel where they just carved out a series of small huts within the mountain, and that's where the dwarves lived. And so the players are just kind of traveling through there, making their way downtown. No, not doing that. Just kind of doing the opposite. They're making their way out of town. But they go that direction, get out. And then the next stages, which we've done not a whole lot except for just putting our foundational stuff, the next few stages are just all going to be tunnels, because the dwarves, wanting to protect their stuff, would have naturally made it a very labyrinthian approach to those vaults, hoping that many people would just flat out get lost and die if they were trying to get there to steal their treasure. So they have to get through a couple different series of winding, confusing tunnels, and then the final part of it, so what's going to eventually happen is just to throw a few monkey wrenches in their plans. In the process of getting to the vaults, everything's going to be basically trapped so that they don't have a choice. And part of this tunnel is going to collapse, meaning they have to take an emergency exit that they'll find up to the surface, and they'll have to travel back to the city through the surface of this sort of mountainous this sort of valley that's in between a handful of mountains until they can find sort of one of the existing back entrances to the city. And so that's kind of what we have going on here. So that's what we're working on, and I'm gonna have us try and finish up today our little Dwarven Suburbs here. Which I don't know, something about that idea of there just being a little dwarven neighborhood of all these houses that are just all kind of put together, just like a series of, like, you know, huts and tents and stuff, and that's just, you know, where they all lived. It just amuses me, and I really like that idea of that setting. So I've been having fun with this one, and I'm hoping we can at least finish up that one today. Hopefully maybe even get started on our next set of tunnels and stuff like that. But I suppose for us to make that kind of progress, I gotta actually start writing some stuff, don't I? Still, I think it's good to go over that recap. It's like I say, the thing is, I was kind of thinking about it. You know, I put all of the replays, all the VODs up on my YouTube channel. Self-plug, go check out my YouTube channel. I put them all up there. The fact is, there's like hundreds of hours of that by now. Hundreds of hours of that. So it's a really good idea to just, like, put in a little bit of a catch-up at the beginning of each one. So that way people can just, like, jump in wherever they want to, if that's how they're going to watch, and not feel completely lost and confused about what the heck I'm working on. So let's see here. We need to for here, we need to pull up our notes page here, and we are on. Ooh, look at that! That's fun. We get to starting with a mini boss battle and designing that. Hooray! So let's go ahead and do it. Mini boss battle, and now we've already predetermined sort of the challenge level and how difficult that's going to be based on. All of this stuff is based on, and I'm really seriously thinking about just putting up a video where I explain how I kind of mathematically figure out all of the challenge levels for different battles and stuff, because it's this sort of complicated descending pyramid type of setup based on what it all comes down to is based on what level the players should be when they start a particular chapter, and what level of it, like how much experience it would take for them to go from that level, you know, this one they start at level 5, so basically how much experience it would take for them to get from level 5 to level 6, and doing a lot of goofy math to make it so that it starts off easier and gets more difficult until the final thing of the chapter is a nice big bad boss for them to finally earn, you know, whatever else they need to get themselves up to that next level. So I'm not going to explain that all right now, but I should do a video about it. Suffice to say, we've gone through the process, and we've sort of established that the mini boss battle, so for these ones, mini boss battles just match the difficulty of a hard battle. So it's going to be worth about 1150 experience points, give or take whatever we need to just, like, actually put in whatever monsters we want to do. So it's going to take... So this battle is going to be worth that much experience points, and then we used that to mathematically figure out what monsters we're going to use, right? So we're here, and so the boss here is going to be a doppelganger, and I'm really excited about doing this because I don't know that it's necessarily going to result in a fight with a doppelganger, because this doppelganger has his own goals. It has its own mission and its own wants and all that kind of stuff. And depending on how players play this and whether they even realize it's a doppelganger or not is going to really influence whether there's going to be any actual fight involved here. So we have our doppelganger, and that's worth 700. We need to get ourselves up to 1100, and so I'm thinking if we just do our math, or 1150, if we do our math, we can throw in a Nothic there and have a battle there, and I think this is going to be perfect. This is going to be really perfect. So let's do our doppelganger. Did I spell that right, or is it red because doppelganger isn't a recognized doppelganger? I probably did doppelganger. Yeah. I get the L's and the Lays mixed up a lot when I'm trying to spell words. I'm like the worst writer in the world to be doing a writing stream because I'm so bad at it. Like mechanically bad at it. That's worth 700 XP. So we've got that. I'm going to go ahead and do 1 Nothic, which is worth 450 XP. So that's perfect. Yeah, that's really perfect. That really does math out exactly right. And so what I want to do with this, here's what I'm gonna do. Like I'll take the time to write it out, but just so that way you guys don't have to sit there with bated breath until I actually write it. What I'm gonna do is the doppelganger is gonna be disguised. It's gonna disguise itself as a Duergar, right? Because we've talked about, I guess I didn't talk about this in my recap. So the Duergar have made their own efforts to get to the Dwarven vaults, but have not had any success. Most of their crews that they send to find that information don't make it back. And our players earlier in this dungeon will find a small group of injured Duergar that are too injured to finish making it back, and so have just kind of been camping out in that little mall area there that we have our players go through. And it gives them the opportunity to just sort of think about like, oh, do we want to help them? Or are we going to fight and kill them? Whatever. And it can kind of give them some freedom to play around with that. But we've already established that there are probably within this pathway in some way, shape, or form Duergar around. And so the doppelganger is going to disguise itself as a Duergar, and it's going to play it. It's going to play the interaction like it is a lost Duergar that really wants to just make it back to the city, but is lost and not sure how to get back. And so what we're going to do with the setup here is when players barge in, the doppelganger is going to pretend to be a Duergar fighting this Nothic. I mean, normally it would be a doppelganger fighting a Nothic. Like, the actual combat isn't that, bizarro, because they would totally be fighting, because Nothics are just, like, nasty creatures. But it's going to try and use that as an opportunity to trick the players into thinking that it's just a Duergar, with the hope that it will convince them, that they'll be convinced to help it get back to the Duergar city, where it can then go about doing its own pursuing its own goals of sort of infiltrating this Duergar community, and sort of doing what it will to gain power there. And so it's going to try and use the players to do that, and it'll be interesting because I don't know that it's necessarily going to have to attack them. It's just going to have to trick them. So it'll be interesting to play it out, but I like the setup here, and I think this will be a really good setup. Because like what's interesting about this thing that we're doing right now, like this room, is that it's not just trying to trick the players' characters. I'm kind of trying to trick the players, right? Because this is the type of meta that it would be very difficult for a group of players to just pretend that they don't know, right? If they're aware that this is a doppelganger, right? If they're aware that something, even if they're just aware that something's up and they don't know what it is, they will just be incessantly trying to figure out what that is, as opposed to accepting the fact that their characters don't know what's up. And so that's what's fun about this, and what I think will be an interesting kind of unique challenge for me as a DM standpoint, is giving them fair information without accidentally tipping them off as players that something weird is going on, because I don't really want them to be aware of it either. So, how's it going, Jara? Jara 5, the fifth one, the fifth and best, I assume. We're working on a long form campaign. What we're kind of working on right now is a sort of tunnel dungeon that takes place in an abandoned dwarven city. Is kind of what we're working on right now. Abandoned and now reclaimed by Duergar, unbeknownst to most of the people. Most of the people of the world. Well, all of the people of the world except our players are the ones that find that out. But yeah, so that's what I want to do with this. So I'm gonna start off by putting a pretty, probably what'll turn into a pretty hefty DM note here. But I want to make sure I explain all of this. I always say it's really good to put in like well detailed DM notes, because I mean, for this one in particular, I'm writing this campaign, but I'm presently not running it at all. And I don't want to, because my players know that I stream and occasionally stop by the stream, so I don't want to accidentally be giving away stuff that they'll be doing. So I'm writing their campaign separately. This is just a project that I'm working on for the sake of having something to work on for the stream. And I will probably run this again someday, but it might not be for years. So the better I put DM notes here, like the better DM notes I put in here, the easier it's going to be to catch myself up whenever I get to it, right? And it's like, even if I were actively running it, it's good to put those notes in there, one, so you remember them in the moment. I'm holding up my thumb to show one. I always forget that, like, I have to basically put my hand right in front of my face for a gesture to be there. So one, we have to do that, and two, I forget what the second point I was making because I distracted myself talking about my hands, which is just a real professional thing to do. Spot on. I don't know. I don't remember. It's probably unimportant. You want to put notes so that you remember what's you don't have to think about it when you're running the game. And two, so if you ever run the campaign again later, and again it's like years later, then you can remember what the heck was going on. That was the second point I was going to make. All right, let's do some writing. So when players walk in, they'll see the doppelganger in combat with the Nothic, but the doppelganger is disguised. Disguised. There it is. As a Duragar. It's probably just freaking out because it's not capitalist. No, it's Duergar. That's why. That's where I'm getting messed up. Duergar. Not Duregar, Duergar. It's different and it matters. Okay. The doppelganger is disguised as a Duergar when they enter. Now, I want to see something here. We've got our doppelganger. So it has slam. So it makes 2 melee attacks, which are basically just the slam. And so I'm trying to think about how we can sell that, and I'm thinking we'll just sell it as the thing is just like trying to fist fight, and it uses the slam. So it's like it's going to try and sell this whole scene as it being a Duergar who is caught unawares without weapons or something like that. It's a Duergar that's lost without weapons trying to fend off this Nothic. And it's going to try and pretend to be pretty pitiful because it's only doing our 1d6 plus 4 damage. Meanwhile, it will occasionally be doing its read thoughts. And so it's like, yeah. Like, it'll try and do that, but it's going to try and do that in situations where it can, like, sell any sort of reason why it wouldn't be attacking. Like, I really want this doppelganger to be very clever. I really want it to be very clever and very conniving, right? I want it to have its plans, and I want it to be quick on its feet and ready to do what it wants, which is one of the great things that we can sit here and sort of write it out and make notes on its personality, because I basically want it to be smarter and more clever than I am. And that's a hard thing to do when you have to make stuff up on the spot. So it's really good that we can plan out some behaviors and sort of know what actions to take at what different cues. So that way we can not worry about if I'm being particularly clever, and just trust that, like, a slower, more thoughtful version of myself who has the time to think of these things can be more clever than trying to respond and think on his toes version of me. Assuming that not under pressure me is clever as well, which is, perhaps a bigger assumption than is fair, but we're not gonna worry about it. We're just gonna do our best. We're gonna do our best and hope that I really am clever. How many times can I say clever in a 5-minute span before it stops sounding like a word. Alright, read thoughts. Doppelganger magically reads the surface thoughts of one creature within 60 feet of it. The effect can penetrate barriers, but 3 feet of wood or dirt, 2 feet of stone, 2 inches of metal, or a thin sheet of lead blocks it. Target is in range, the doppelganger can continue to read its thoughts as long as the doppelganger concentration isn't broken, as if concentrating on a spell. While reading the target's mind, the doppelganger has advantage on wisdom, insight, and charisma, perception, intimidation, and persuasion checks against the target. So it's going to, so what it's going to do, so here's how I kind of want to plan its behavior, right? When they enter, it will primarily use its slam attack, selling the act that it is a Duergar who is lost and was caught off guard without a weapon by the Nothic. If there is an excuse to do so in battle, it will, quote, cower and let the players handle the battle while secretly trying to read any of their minds to influence how the battle goes if it wants a specific outcome. So I just wanted to put that DM note, and I always like to put these DM notes in like first. I always try to put these types of notes before I put the descriptive text, which I leave in black, because like that's kind of a cue to myself. Like the black stuff is stuff, the black text, other than when we get into like our more descriptive bullet points like this, that tends to be like descriptive scene setting stuff that I put in there, and that's stuff that I can like read aloud to my players. So that way, again, if I'm not feeling particularly clever or creative in the moment and can't just like describe a room on the spot, I've got something that I can at least read, and like reading things always feels a little more robotic than just sort of organically describing it. But at the very least, I've got something that if I'm like tired and it's getting towards the end of a session, I'm like, I don't know, it's a place, it's a room. I've got something that I can read off to describe the setting. But I always put the red DM notes first, so that way if there's any sort of modifiers or anything that I'm supposed to try and be selling with the fact that I am reading this stuff, I can be ready to do that primarily, like first off. So got our DM note. I think that's good here. And so we're just going to describe here, and we'll just add a little description, which is basically something like, as you enter this small hut, your eyes, well, I don't know, I don't want to get that flowery with it. You see a Duergar squaring off with a Nothic. The Duergar is weaponless, but appears to be is weaponless. Actually, we'll say is weaponless, but well, yeah, we'll stick with appears to be ready for a fight. As soon as the door opens, he looks to you and shouts. We'll just add like some random thing like, oh good, someone with weapons. Good, someone with weapons. This thing jumped me, and I don't. Let's see. Jumped me, and I need help. I don't know. I'm just trying to. I'm really bad with dialogue. I'm just trying to come up with something like I say. This thing jumped me, and I need help. Please, you've got to help me out here. And he's just trying to goad them into, into helping. And actually, you know what I kind of want to do? See, here's what's difficult about this. Here's what's difficult. As soon as it tries to read their minds, the players are gonna have to make saves, right? So it's like and that's gonna be a meta giveaway. Although, actually, you know what? With Read Thoughts, reads the surface thoughts of one creature within 60 feet. It just does that. It actually doesn't need a roll for that. It just has advantage on checks. And actually, what's even better about this, too, is because the Nothic has this weird sight. Has that and has the Rotting Gaze. More importantly, has the Rotting Gaze. And players will have interacted with Nothics beforehand. I don't know if I was thinking about this when I was first choosing these monsters. I don't remember thinking that, but it was quite a few weeks ago when we first chose these monsters for this. So we could do that. Balls Too Wild. Boy, that sounds like a real handful to deal with. I like that name. But yeah, it could be that. But what's even better is if it's battling the Nothic here with this Rotting Gaze, we can just kind of pass off any saves, at least during this battle, as being the result of the Nothic, and that'll actually work because our players will have encountered Nothics beforehand, because I'm pretty sure I remember there being Nothics in the earlier setting. Yes, we've got a Nothic in our earlier part of the dungeon, so they'll have already encountered one of these things, and so they'll already have the meta knowledge that this Nothic will require Constitution saves, right? And so it's like, I mean, you know, if they had to do a wisdom save, that would kind of get in the way, but they won't, thank goodness. But even if they did, we'd kind of have that cover there. So I actually think that's kind of perfect. It really adds a lot of sort of gray area to it. Because like I say, the trick with the doppelganger, is we don't want to just sell this bluff to our players' characters. We want to sell it to the players too, because this is the type of thing where meta knowledge of what's going on could really damage the experience, right? If players know, even if they just know that something is up, it will kind of ruin the experience, because they're going to, and this is just something that I recognize from experience, and it's not any player being a bad player. It's not anyone being, you know, conniving and trying to destroy the experience. It's not anyone intentionally doing anything. It's just human nature that once they know something is up, they're going to immediately distrust this creature. They never will trust it, right? They never will trust it, and that'll bleed into how they play their characters. There's only so much that, like, you'll occasionally get some people that are so good at separating out that metagaming that they'll say, like, no, but my character, you know, would do this, that, or the other thing. But most players won't be quite that discerning, and they'll distrust that, and that will impact their decisions regarding this thing, and that goes completely against what we're trying to accomplish with it. So it really does become a matter of not just the doppelganger tricking our player characters. It becomes me, the DM, trying to trick our players, which can be really difficult because there's that meta layer, there's that game rules layer. So, and that's why I'm really glad, actually, as I'm reading that, I'm really glad to be reminded that they designed the doppelganger to not require saves for that type of thing. So it's perfect. Oh, yeah. Yeah, having the innocuous dice roll, 100%. 100%, that's a good one. That's a really good one. The other thing that I do a lot of times, too, is I make sure to not have it always be consistent that low roll is bad and high roll is good. Like, I'll have a lot of times I'll you know, like, because just by making sure that, you know, like, a high roll results in getting an answer that might not be a good thing, right? You can kind of mix it up that way. That's a bit harder to do because there's always this inherent, like, high roll is successful in what you want to do, and usually success means good, but sometimes success can mean trouble, right? And so, like, you can kind of mix those things up so that it's not always necessarily clear if they roll well or poorly what that ends up meaning. But no, like, I know exactly the trick that you're talking about there. That's a very good one to use. Although I try to not do it too much, just because I don't want my players to ever get to a point where they can start, like, recognizing when a roll is real and when it's fake. You know, I don't want to tip the hand too much, but to fall back on occasionally, that's a very good option. But okay, so we've got this. So good, someone with weapons. This thing jumped me and I need help. Please, you got to help me out here. And I'm going to put in one more DM note just to make it crystal clear. At this point, it will be reading one of their thoughts and will say something to try and appeal to that character's personality to convince and we'll say something to try and character's personality and convince them to help him. So we'll do that one. Boom. We'll do that. And then, and actually, no, we're going to say this. And then, however the battle shakes out, the doppelganger will then try to convince players to let him stick with them and to have them lead it out back to the Durgar city. And I'm going to put one more note here. Remember that it can read their minds so that it can subtly use whatever approach players used with the Durgar to its advantage, right? Because we have earlier on when the players are in the Durgar city, we have a lot of opportunities for them to be there either by stealth, either as captives and enemies, or as willing allies to these Durgar, depending on what they want to do. Interaction with these Durgar is kind of a blank slate. So while Durgar do sort of naturally trend towards evil, this colony of Durgar have never interacted with anyone outside of the mountains. They were created by the Unhinging. They're the creation. They're dwarves. The original Durgar were dwarves that were unable to escape the mountains during the Unhinging, and the magical chaos and radiation turned them into Durgar. And that was the birth of the Durgar people, so they don't have interactions with the outside. So there's a lot of opportunity for our players to sort of do what they want to do to establish that first contact. And so this thing, being able to read their minds, can kind of use that, right? So, like, if they chose to be stealthy and sneaky about it and not interact with the Durgar, it will just be able to subtly say things like I don't know who you are or how you got here, but I know you must not have been, been sent by my people because they don't trust anyone. And it'll like play into whatever they used as their decision to be stealthy about things and to avoid the Durgar, right? And so it's like it can use those things to sort of play and act as like a smart, intuitive creature to hopefully help sell the fact that this is a Durgar, not anything else, is the hope here. So I wanted to make sure and put that note there, because this is going to be kind of a complicated thing. And so what I'm going to do here is, so now the reward for this room is that they get some information about lore of this area, lore of this of what's going on here. And so what I'm going to do for this, I'm going to put a DM note. We're going to say, as a DM note, the doppelganger is a very old creature that knows a lot about these mountains, as it has been able to use its powers to survive and explore freely. It will answer players' questions. It will answer players' questions regarding the tunnels and the vaults, so long as doing so will not reveal its true identity. So long as it will not reveal its true identity, and so long as doing so will help in its goal to become embedded in the Duergar community as the first step towards much larger plans. Because it's like we say, its motivation is ultimately that it wants to somehow use influence and power it can gain through the Duergar people as a way to slowly gain influence and power in the world outside as well. Like, this doppelganger has like really grand ideas about being sort of a ultimate ruler type of figurehead in this world, and it's gonna do whatever it wants to do, and it's gonna use its mind reading abilities to do so. So I think that's really good. And I think that's actually all we need. It's interesting that this one is much more DM note than it is actual stuff that like can be read aloud to our players in the moment of play, but the nature of how this thing is trying to be a deceiver plays a pretty big role in this. I'm actually going to put one more thing here. If players bring it along, it will do its best to be away from combat so that it doesn't get injured in any way that might betray its true identity. Right, so it's gonna avoid getting hurt as well, because injuries might reveal something about it, and it does not want that to happen. So I think that's awesome. I think that's an excellent room. I think that's an excellent mini boss, because I think depending on how players play this and what things are happening, I think it could be really interesting to see how this plays out, especially if the players take this creature with them. Right? Like, I think it'd be really interesting, because I could see it doing something. Like, if it wants to try and convince them not to go deeper, it may disguise itself as one of them, as one of the players, right? And say something to the effects of like, "Uh-oh, we lost our Duergar friend. We lost him. We gotta turn back and find him." Right? And like, so it may try to dispatch of or dispose of one of the player characters. It might actually do that, right? It's not going to resort to that immediately, but I don't know. I just think this is a really cool interaction. I think it could be really fun, especially because it could expand much further beyond just the single room, right? It's always fun when a room in a dungeon has relevance even beyond just whatever can be found in that little room. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be really good. Okay, I'm just going to take like a quick, 2-3 minute break. I need to run to the bathroom and refresh my beverage. So I'm just going to go take care of that stuff really quickly. If y'all want to sit tight, I will be back pretty rapidly. And we're going to keep going. We got at least another hour of writing in us here. But I also have much less than an hour's worth in me before I wet myself. So hopefully that's not too graphic for you, but I'm gonna take just a quick break. Like I say, quick break, like 2-3 minutes, and then I will be right back. So again, I appreciate your patience. Thank you for sticking with me, and I will be back very shortly. right. We are back. Thank you so much for waiting for me. I appreciate it. It's, like I say, I know it's probably not the best thing for viewer retention, but you know, it is good for pants retention and not having to change them. So sometimes you just gotta answer the call that nature sends to you. So all right, so we got this room kind of all figured out. I'm really excited about this room. This is a really cool one. I think it's going to be a really fun one, you know, whenever the day comes that I actually play this with people. So now we just got to quickly decorate our room here. So let's just go ahead and throw in some decorations. We're trying to establish an environment here that looks a lot like, oh, I don't want these to snap to the grid. It looks a lot like a world that was abandoned and ditched out upon in a hurry, is what we want this to sort of feel like. So we're just trying to, which basically means we just want to make the whole area feel very, very normal and very like lived in. Is kind of what we're going, like a frozen in time sort of situation here. So I'm gonna make this one just like maybe like a joint household. Maybe there were like 2 families or something that lived in here. I don't know. I'm not thinking about it in too much detail. We'll put a couple chairs there, and then let's see. I want to put. I know there we go. We got some bookshelves. I was gonna put like one bookshelf right here. All right, so it's like they have their little lounge there, and then I also wanted to put. I want to put like a table. And we'll put the table like right here. Whoops, hold on. Just the way the tables kind of lay themselves out. I think it's going to be better to do it this way. There we go. Just that way it's like a big square table. I don't really have a big square table. And so we're going to... Let's just put these underneath. Boom. Boom. Oops, wait, no, that's a little too far under. That looks weird. That's better. There, maybe one's out here, and then, I don't know, maybe a broken one. Wait, let's do a broken one. There we go. Because, I mean, we're trying to make it look lived in, but then at the same time, this place has been abandoned for how long now? So, you know, it's gonna look a little wonky. Right, there we go. I think that's a good size. Put that right there. Perfect. Let's see here. Perfect. Okay, so we can do that right there. I don't know, maybe we just won't give them a rug. That's fine. And so that'll be fun. Like they can go in here and they'll see the battle and then be ready to interact with our Duraganger. I don't know. Duragar and Doppelganger are almost too similar to be able to merge for comedic effect. But gosh darn it, I'm gonna try. And I do that for you guys. That's for the entertainment. So you're welcome. All right. Cool. So we got that room figured out. So now we just gotta come up with a regular hard battle, which we can probably just throw in a few like Nothics or something like that. Hard battle is going to be worth, again, our 1150. We could do. If we just consider that 1200, we could just like throw on like 6 of the core spawn crawlers, which I think would be fun. Those things are nasty. They look like I think they look a lot like the Zerg from StarCraft. Like that's what they look like to me. But oops, that's too far. That's what's happening there. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Yeah, perfect. Underground, or underlined hard battle. And that's again 1150. Well, we're gonna just say what it's actually worth, 1200 XP. It's always okay to give them a little extra. I don't think this will turn into too much for 5 level 5 players as we're balancing this forward to handle. So we're gonna just do 6 of the core spawn crawler right? That was the proper full name. I always get it like mixed up. Core spawn crawler. Got it. Nailed it. Yeah, so we got core spawn crawler, and each of those are worth 200 XP apiece. Just that way I've got my quick notes for if I need it for divvying out experience points. Oops. I'm just going to put a little note here. One note that I pretty much always will put in here for DM notes is whether or not this is a room that it's even possible for players to like sneak into, because many players, when faced with a door, will sort of fall into the habit of just always doing stealth checks and always expecting great success from it if they roll well, right? And there's just some rooms that's not going to be possible. And generally speaking, I will try to avoid, you know, like I'll try to do the thing where you avoid having them roll if it's not possible to succeed at something. But kind of like we were talking about before, where sometimes you have to, as a DM, sort of fool your players to a degree to keep things fresh and spicy for them. With doing stealth checks and all that kind of stuff for like opening doors, you sometimes need to just like let them try, even though that was never going to be possible. Because the idea is like, okay, in this room, so what I'm going to put here, the note that I'm going to put is too many enemies for effective stealth checks here. So we're just going to put a little note there, because in essence what it would be is suppose someone rolls a nat 20 on, you know, stealth check to quietly open the door, right? They're going to very successfully open the door very quietly, but this ain't Skyrim. You can't just crouch down and not be seen. So the result is going to be they do very successfully quietly open the door, but they find themselves face to face with 6 monsters, 3 of which are staring directly at them as they were already looking towards the door. So it's kind of like they still had success, but it doesn't always get them the result that they want. And you kind of have to do that with these types of things, because it's kind of a dead giveaway if, you know, 90% of the doors players interact with, they're like, oh, I want to stealth check. And you're like, okay, yeah, let's see if you manage to sneak in. That sounds great. And then just like randomly with 1 or 2 of them periodically, you're just like, no, don't bother with that roll. Don't bother with the roll. You can't avoid it if you're opening the door. It's like, well, you know, now maybe I don't want to open the door, right? So you sometimes kind of have to let them do that and just apologize if they get mad because there was never a chance that they can open it. You just gotta say, you know, just basically what I'll always do is I'll pull the curtain back and I'll be like, look guys, I have to do that, otherwise it's going to be a dead giveaway that there's something dangerous watching the door on the other side. You know, I have to let you do that stealth. So too many enemies for effective stealth checks here doesn't mean we won't let them roll stealth checks or let them try. It just means that they will not succeed no matter what they do. As the door swings open, you find yourselves facing you find yourselves facing 6 core spawn crawl. I don't want to use that title. 6 monstrous creatures, a few of which are looking looking directly at you, and then sometimes I just put little notes like fights on. Like they're just right there. There's no negotiating with these things. These things are monsters. They want to consume you. They want to kill you, and feast on your entrails. There's no getting out of this one. You guys are just you're in it. Ready, fight. Right, so you just kind of sometimes it's just what you gotta do. And so now this one, let's go ahead and do map here. So one of the rewards that I offer up my players. So I like I'm clearly using Dungeon Draft as you can see for my mapping things out, and that's because my group plays online. We play weekly online, and so I always prepare for it because it's a lot easier to have digital online maps ready to go that you then just hand draw if you're playing in person, rather than the other way around, to like sort of have a series of hand drawn maps that you can use in person and then having to figure out how to present them digitally to your players, right? So I just always make things in here. And it's nice because I do play with my players online. The one of the things that's always a challenge, though, is as a DM, I really like that using Foundry. That's the system that I use, just because it sort of has inherent matchup, work with the interactable components of Dungeon Draft, right? Dynamic lighting, doors that open and close, all that good stuff. I really like the fact that when players first enter here, everything is blacked out and they just have no idea what the map looks like. I think that's fun. I think it creates a lot of realism. I think it makes it so that I can actually give them a maze and have it be an interesting, fun adventure. But oftentimes that frustrates players. And I think a lot of it is less to do with not knowing and more to do with the fact that it just like makes it pitch black, so they can't get the same sense, like, because even if you don't know an environment in real life, right, things aren't completely black. You can have views of context clues. The problem is that it just tends to be very all or nothing when you're talking about a top-down view. So the compromise that I do with my players is somewhere within each series of rooms, even though it's hard to necessarily have a good lore explanation for it, it really is a game mechanic, true blue through and through. What I do is I say, okay, everything is blacked out and you can't see everything until you find the map. Every set of rooms will have its own map, and if you find that map, I will then drag your characters around, or give them permissions that they can see the top-down view of the entire map, even though they don't know what enemies are there and all that kind of stuff. At least, if they find the map, they can then get the bird's eye view of it and then know where all of the rooms are and stuff like that. Not necessarily what's in each room, but I do that as a sort of compromise for my players. So it's possible for them to get that bird's eye view without ever having stepped foot in here after a room or two, but they have to actually earn it. They have to do something to get that. And that's something that I personally don't just like to give away for free. And that's just my personal style. I think there's perfect merits to doing it a lot of different ways. So don't ever feel like you have to do it exactly the way I do it. That's just that's just my approach. So with that in mind, this room will have, as a reward, a map, and we have to just kind of come up with a reason for it to be a map. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it, I don't want it to be just too obvious here. So we're just going to say, tucked in a drawer in this, so tucked in a drawer in this home, there is a neighborhood map. There are name labels on many of the households as depicted in the map, or as depicted on the map. But obviously, this info hasn't been relevant for a while because it's an abandoned city. So obviously it's not an important thing that they're labeled, but they are, just to make it seem more realistic. I don't even need to put any notes. It's a map. Everyone knows exactly what a map is. Everyone knows what a map is. I don't need to describe that to them. So let's go ahead and decorate now. Hooray! It's kind of fun doing these maps and doing it as we do the rest of the writing, because it's taking a little break to play The Sims part way through. And that's kind of fun in its own way. Okay, let's see here. Let's think about beds. I haven't done a bed on an angle yet. Maybe these people are real fancy and bougie. Maybe they're really fancy and bougie, but then they also had 2 kids. So these 2 kids all live here. Right? They're all kind of in their own places like that. And then maybe we'll give them a sofa. I don't know if sofas would really be accurate to this type of fantasy setting, but I like putting them in there because it just is visually appealing. We can do that, and then maybe this family has like a rounded table that they just put in the center, and that's how they like to do it. Alright, so let's put like a chair, a chair, and I'm not going to put a broken one in this one because it would just be a little too repetitive and samey if every single home had like one broken chair. That just wouldn't make any sense. That would just be ridiculous. I mean, come on, man. Oh wait, we got to give them a fireplace. We will give them like a nice big fireplace. Actually, check this out. We can have some fun with this. We can give them a nice big fireplace, and then let's a nice big fireplace, and then these guys have a couple pots next to it, right? They still had some of their cookware out when they abandoned ship. Oh my gosh, my nose does this thing sometimes where the tip of it itches, not inside the nose, not like allergies. It's like the outside tip of my nose just itches. Like there's this weird psychosomatic thing where it does that, where it'll just randomly start itching, and it is the strongest compulsion to just like scratch it. But I look like a crazy person when I do it, and it drives me insane, and it's happening right now. So if I look like a crazy person, it's because I am, and I apologize that you have to deal with that and awkwardly wonder if I'm okay. That's why I keep sitting here. See, there I go again. I can't stop it. I try to not like actually scratch because I don't want to like damage my skin too much. You know, I'm not like a particularly big into the whole like, you know, oh, I got to keep my pores perfect and stuff, but like, you know, I don't want to scrape it raw or anything, so I just kind of sit here and rub it. That's why I keep doing this. It's like I'm having that, and like it will not stop. It won't stop, you know, for hours. I'm gonna be doing this probably the rest of all of my streams today. It's just gonna itch. It's gonna itch. It's gonna look weird, and I'm gonna be a weirdo, and there's just nothing I can do about it because my own face hates me, which is fair, but also uncalled for. Anyway. Alright, so we get to come up with a trap here. So this is kind of an interesting situation. We have to wonder why one of these homes would be kind of trapped. You know, like why there would be a trap on any one of these homes. Because we don't have, I mean, we have our doppelganger Duragar guy, Duragai, if you will, and I know I will. Is that, well, maybe that's just like the plural for Duragar, or maybe Duragar is one of those words where like Duragar is singular and plural, right? It's like that Duragar or the Duragar. I don't know. I shouldn't worry about this. This is not an important thing. Point is, we have this doppelganger here. Okay, I'm going to try and fight the compulsion. It's just so bad. I'm going to try and fight the compulsion, see if I can just fight through it. So this Duragar does want to, like, trick and fool our players. But I don't know, like, as a boss, he doesn't have any reason to just randomly trap one of the houses, particularly the house that he is not in. So I have to think about what would be another reason for a trap. And there's kind of two ways that you can approach traps, right? There can either be like a naturally occurring trap, which is just like, that's like, you know, something about the environment makes it dangerous. So like they'll accidentally trigger a wall to collapse on them or something. Oh my gosh, my nose is just so bad right now. I'm going to try and just like gently brush it. So that way I can like stimulate it without having to like itch, and maybe that will slowly wean me off it. I don't know. Like I feel like maybe I'm just making myself look like even more of a crazy person by constantly talking about it rather than just dealing with it and letting myself be a crazy person. Gosh, so many ways that all of this stuff can go wrong, and I'm just stepping right in all of them. But yeah, so there wouldn't be any reason for the boss of this area to trap a room. Like a lot of times you can kind of just have the convenience of the boss would like trap a room or two that are like important bottlenecks for exploring like that region or whatever. Right? A lot of times you can sort of just have a reason that they would trap a room. You know, maybe there's like treasure in there or something like that. And you can explain it like that, but that's just not really an option for this one. So what I'm thinking is, because we're in an old abandoned suburb or something like that, the trap is just that maybe there's like, they've got a chest of their valuables, but they've trapped it as sort of like a home security system. And that's just still intact because nobody over the centuries has come pillaging through here, right? So that's kind of the route that I'm feeling here with this. But now I got to think about what that would look like. And one of the things too that's nice, I've shared this on my Discord before. There's a resource here. This Kassoon website. It has so many awesome tools. It doesn't have some of the tools like that it provides aren't the best versions of that tool. For example, it's got like the treasure drops tool. I've found a better loot generator that I like to use. That said, this website has just about everything you could really need for inspiration and help writing things out for a homebrew campaign and stuff. And one of the ones that I like to do is they have their puzzle and trap generators, which are actually really nice because they come up with a lot of really interesting ideas. It's a lot of really good, interesting ideas that I may have to modify for any reason or another. But it makes things, it helps with inspiration, right? So we can do level 5, we can do setback, dangerous, or deadly. I'm going to set it to dangerous, right? Because it's supposed to be a anti-theft system, so it wouldn't just want to be a setback to make it harder to get that treasure or whatever, right? It's got to be something dangerous, but we don't want it to be deadly because no homeowner wants to deal with a body. They want to, like, you know, take a finger, not take a life. So we can do that, and then we'll just do it totally random. And so you do this, and it'll provide you a couple different options of traps here, and we can just kind of read through them. And then if one of these seems like it's kind of close to something, then we just do like a few modifiers, you know, a few modifications for whatever we need, and then we've got a trap. And this has been a really helpful thing in helping me make sure that not all of my traps devolve to like, oh no, the lock stabbed you. Oh shoot. You know, like, oh, there was a hole in the ground and it was covered by leaves, right? Like, there's just so many creative things that have been put into this generator that I so highly recommend. If you're a DM out there and you're just trying to find traps, really good tool. Because like I say, even if you don't want to take it at its, you know, face value, whatever it provides, it can be a really good springboard for some inspiration. So check that one out. Let's hear Shrine of Evil. Targets all good creatures that touch it. See 14 wisdom save. See, I feel like that's kind of the opposite. If we're gonna do a shrine that like is based on alignment, it would have to do with evil ones because an evil person is more likely to steal something. So I already think that one's out. What's this Bling Trap? An area is warded against unrecognized intruders. Activating when a creature enters without the correct badge, amulet, etc. Entering without the item in their person releases the spell stored within the trapped object. Effect +6 to hit against one target. Cast Blink, centered on the trigger with DC 14. Entry activates when the creature enters the area without the correct badge. Countermeasures spell or other effect can sense the presence of magic. And then, where does this thing take us? I think it's going to be easier to find the spell here and just do Blink. I want to make sure I'm remembering properly what Blink does. But I'm actually already immediately liking the idea of this one. I think this will be a fun one. Roll a d20 at the end of each of your turns for the duration of the spell. On the roll of 11 or higher, you vanish from your current place of existence and appear in the ethereal plane. If the spell fails, then the casting is wasted if you were already on that plane. At the start of your next turn, and when the spell ends, if you are on the ethereal plane, you return to an unoccupied space of your choice. See within 10 feet of the space you vanished from. No unoccupied space is available within that range. Appear in the nearest unoccupied space. So I'm already thinking that that's not really all that useful. That would be a really bad security system because then they would just like return and it would be used up. So I'm thinking I want to regenerate and see if we can get some different ones. Double pit with spikes, okay. Acid fog trap. See, this one immediately seems like a good one. Like there's some sort of mechanism on the chest or whatever that releases an acid fog. An area is warded against unrecognized intruders, activating when a creature enters without the correct badge, amulet, etc. Entering without the item on their person causes hidden pipes to spew out an acid fog, scaring the area and burning anyone inside. Effect targets all creatures within a 10-foot square. Okay. Spell or other effect that can sense the presence of magic, such as detect magic, reveals an aura of divination. That makes sense. Accessible to spell magic. A strong gust of wind will disperse the fog. Not an issue. So I think what will be really good here. So I think this one can work. I think we can use our acid fog trap. So let's go ahead and go back to our stuff here. So I want that underlined. Underlined. See, once I start getting those like little word goof ups and stuff, that's when you can tell that I've been doing a lot of writing in a row, because eventually my brain starts jumbling up and getting confused. Happens to the best of us. Okay, so the trap here. Whoops. Let's see here. We're gonna say you walk into this house and see that it looks much like all of the others in this place. What stands out, however, is that there is a chest. There's a chest here that has many large dents and dings, as though... Well, no, it wouldn't have any of those because the acid fog would probably just kill them all. Just here, we'll say that appears big enough to hold a small fortune. Fortune. There we go. Say that there. And then we're going to say our DM note here. Chest is trapped. Trigger is trying to open it without the key. Keyhole is obvious on it. Right, so I want to be kind of fair to my players and just like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, there's a lock. You think that's probably locked. Probably best not to open it. Like, I'm not going to do that. It's just going to be, you know, described to them like, yeah, there's a locked chest here. And then if they try it, you know, then, you know, that's their decision to make. Is obvious on it. So, obvious on the chest. I'm going to say trigger for the trap is trying to open the chest without the proper key. Right, so you can be around it, you can touch it, you can do whatever you want, but as soon as they like grab the clasp to try and open it, that's when the acid fog cloud will spew out. And so I'm going to bring us down here, and this is where we're going to put all of those details about how it works. So let's see here. So the trigger was this one. It said entry. We're gonna change that a little bit. I'm gonna just like copy and paste the effect and the countermeasures, because I don't feel like I need to edit those at all. I think those are good as they are. So we're just gonna get rid of that. I appreciate that the thing will automatically cite, but This is not for selling or distribution, nor is it for grade in, in a research class. So I'm gonna just not have that there because I don't want that to take up a lot of space. So we got that, and then we need to get our countermeasure spell other effect. Feels of an action, a successful dispel magic cast in the area destroys the trap. I'm gonna not include the strong gust of wind though, because it's underground. There will be no strong gust of wind. It's once it's there, it's there. So put that one right there. Bullet point that. Get rid of that. There we go. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good. So then the last thing that we're going to put in here is we want to put a little bit of lore. And again, this is just all about giving the players information. And I like to try and have it be information that is both like relevant in the sense of it'll give them some clues about just the nature of this formerly abandoned place, this mysterious place that they don't have any context for, right? Because as I talk about, it's a post-apocalyptic situation, so there's a lot of forgotten, abandoned societies and stuff like that going on here. So I like to have the lore be part of that, but I like to try and have that, like have the twist of it still being something useful, right? Information that they can use to maybe better inform their decisions, make them more prepared for a future trial within this whole area. So what I'm going to do with this, we're going to just put our lore in there. Now the first thing I want to do is I just want to make sure that I'm not going to be repeating any lore. So I want to look and see what lore items I've already put in here in these other parts here. So injured Durgar, so I've got a couple different options for them to just learn information by asking questions, which is good. I really like that approach to it because then I don't have to worry about accidentally giving them too much or too little information. So this one, the other lore is right there. And in this one here we say, find a journal kept by one of them. Players must be able to understand under common to read. Corpse of few Durgar, the most skeletons there. So look about them that their bones were picked clean by other creatures in this dungeon. Searching the corpses you find very little value, but one apparently kept a journal with him. And so it's only if they can read it. Also just surprising and mundane, discussing struggles of work and family. Or the final entry expresses that this contingent of dwarves were all injured fighting off chokers. They managed to barricade in here, but are all wounded and cannot easily flee. So that gives them some information. So that one was like to give them information about some of the enemies they might find, which are the chokers, right? And as well as some lore about like the final days of, the city when the dwarves were still there, or when the Durgar were there, and all that kind of stuff. So it does give them some information. This one I'm thinking what I want to do is, I want to put in here, so we'll say, this happens to be the home of one of the guards who helps to protect the very vaults that the players are trying to get to. I'm going to say in the drawer, actually this is really this will be really helpful. In the chest is a journal that has information regarding where to find the keys to the vaults. Namely that they are hidden in the tunnels along the way. So the tunnels that the players are about to get to are where the keys are going to be hidden. That's an idea that I'd had a little while ago. I don't know if I put it in writing quite yet. I think this might be the first instance of me putting it in writing, but it's an idea that I had. So that way it's like it encourages players to be thorough in their investigation of the tunnels, but which also means that it encourages them to get themselves in trouble with like fighting different monsters and stuff, just to make it a bit more of a fun challenge. So we'll do that there, and then we just got to add our flavor text that we can read aloud to our players. And we'll just say, as you rummage through the chest, you find that it has very little of value, unfortunately. However, there are some interesting personal effects, such as old toys and we'll say old toys and a baby blanket. So it's just like mementos or something like that. It's like a memory chest. Also in here is a worn out journal. We'll just say, skimming through it, you see many mentions of the vaults that you are trying to reach, including one entry that mentions that here, see, sort of trying to reach, suggesting this journal was kept by someone who helped guard the vaults. One particular entry discusses having forgotten his key to the vaults, and having to stop to grab the hidden keys from the tunnels along the way there for his shift. So it's like just his journal, by talking about that, sort of gives away the fact that those are there. I mean, the players are going to be able to find those keys even if they never get any clue about them being there. But that gives us like sort of a little, like I say, a little tip of the hand for the players to see and be like, oh, that's important. That's important. I know. I recognize something important when I see it. You know, it kind of gives them that opportunity. So I think that's good. I think that's real good. I think we're ready to decorate this last here room of this household. So let's go ahead and get our object tool out here. I feel like this person lives alone. So we're just gonna put one. I mean, they may live alone, but like they'll probably still have a nice large bed. But I'm feeling like they'll have their nice big old bed that they like to have. We'll do that. And I think, you know what I realized? I just realized I didn't put anything that has drawers. So I'm going to put a little dresser in here that has drawers because that's where I described the map being. So I'm just going to put that there. It just occurred to me. We'll do that. And I feel like this guy has got a nice little fire pit as well. They've all got a little fire pit. But I feel like this guy was maybe like lived alone and so was very studious. And had a lot of time for his own creative ventures and stuff. So I'm going to put this in like lots of bookshelves and stuff in here. Like we're going to use the corner bookcase as well as one of these bad boys here. Like lots and lots of books and stuff. A nice, let me actually see here. Let's see, that's what I'm looking for. Rug. I'm going to make this, I guess that's actually a pretty good size. We'll do that. And then let's go down here. And maybe this guy, even though he lives alone, he's got a nice sofa there for just like relaxing. As well as a little armchair. As always, not sure how period appropriate that would necessarily be, but it's a recognizable thing for our players that they'll be able to see and sort of identify with. And sometimes it's just more important to make sure that your players can have that type of clarity about things. I guess, yeah, let's use this one. So this guy still had a couple chairs. Alright, we'll put a chair right there. Maybe he keeps one chair by the fireplace for some reason. I don't know. Some people do that, don't they? I'm gonna say they do. I'm gonna do that. And, like, there's a chair there, and then maybe one more chair, like right there, way off kilter. This person has their chairs there, and then we'll go ahead and get our chandelier. Hold on, I don't like that they're all like in the same orientation, so I'm gonna like make this one crooked. I don't know why it bothers me if they're all uniform. I don't think anyone would notice in a game, and if they did notice, I don't think they'd be mean enough to call you out on it and make a stink of it. But hey, you know, you never know. So there we go. Perfect. That's good. And hey, how about that? We just finished we achieved the goal that I had, which was to finish our last our rooms within this second set, the second stage of our dungeon here. So I'm pretty pleased with that. That's really good. That's really good. And now we can do the fun part, which is to admire our handiwork. Wow, look at all those beds and small studio apartments. All very samey, all very, you know, not a whole lot of visual distinction happening between most of them, but that's okay. Not all places need to be like so diverse in their appearance and stuff like that. I think it's perfectly reasonable to sometimes have areas that are the same, and sort of like putting in place this suburban hellscape type of situation, I think is really kind of a fun, interesting, unique thing to do that you don't see a whole lot in D&D. So I think that's perfectly fun. And yeah, and there's all of our notes. And we even have all of our little potential. We have all of our potential different long rest issues and stuff like that. Oh, here we go. I did kind of write things down. So I did say that we were going to have key 1. Well, it's actually, okay. So I had already determined that there was going to be key 1. See, this is what I get for not reviewing my own stuff. Well, perfect. So then what we're going to do is, instead of there being this... so actually, no, we'll still have that. We'll still have that. And then let's also say, also in here is a very elaborate key with no indication about what this key is for. And then we'll go ahead and put a DM note here. That's what we're going to do. We're going to put a DM note here that says it's one of the vault keys. There we go. So we'll just do that right there. So they got a key right there, and so they'll probably know what that is, given the context clues. But hey, maybe they won't, you know? You never know. You never know, and that's kind of the fun part. Kind of requires a little bit of player knowledge as well as character knowledge. So that's good. That's really good. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, so that takes care of. Now we're good to go with that. Fun. Oh, wait. No, we're not. Because you know what I didn't put in here, even though it like is a very important component of it. I didn't actually put our chest. Hold on. Object tool. Let's get a chest in here. I know I've already used a couple chests. I'm sure I can find one that's in here. Although I'm also sure it would be quicker and easier. Oh wait, no, here we go. There's a chest. So let's put the chest like right here. And that's the one that'll cast the acid fog. Boom, there we go. Now it's done. Now it's done, and I'm going to save this so we don't lose any of our stuff. Okay, so that's good to go. That's good to go. I feel good about that. And so this is good to note that I'll have to remember to check this, because we do have our hooks and side quests information stuff there. Let me check and make sure that I didn't accidentally forget about anything important with the doppelganger. Here among the Dwarves was planning to infiltrate Durgar community to reproduce and elevate its lifestyle. We'll see opportunity among players and want to use them as a way to go even beyond the Durgar. We'll try to earn their trust in favor of the players. Spears as Durgar. We'll stick close and maybe even try to capitalize on situations. If any players separate from the group, but possibly two if they break into small, we'll try to knock out and claim the player's identity. May try to actively lure players away. Basic plan is to replace the player to return to the rest, claiming a monster took the Durgar. We'll either be found and killed, we'll flee, or if never found out, we'll disappear as soon as returning to the Durgar city. Cool. So we held true to that. We held true to that. So that's good. That's real good. And so our death priest here was once a dwarf, one of the keepers of the keys, but became trapped when trying to return from locking down the vaults at the beginning of the unhinging. It has been corrupted and disfigured slowly over the years since the unhinging began. Now has no remaining sanity that is accessible in the former dwarven mind. The key is around its neck, and it guards it ferociously, though it doesn't really remember why. So that's perfect. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to give us some really good stuff there. So yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. So okay, so here's I'm in a bit of a pickle just because I'm looking at the time, and we normally would have 10 more minutes left on our writing stream, but that is such a good point to capitalize and call it a day. Like, I think that's just such a good place to call it a day. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just end a couple minutes early, and which means that next up is I'm gonna take just like a 15-minute break for myself, and then I'm gonna be back, and we are going to be doing some video gaming. It's Friday, which means I am going to pull out my nice chill game that I'm playing right now, so we can just kind of relax our way into the weekend, which is always my preferred method of entering the weekend. I prefer to have a nice smooth, calm coast into the weekend rather than some sort of weird, chaotic crash and burn into it. So we're gonna do that by going for some cross-country drives, and we're gonna play American Truck Simulator. Is what's gonna happen. So yeah, I'm gonna take like a 15-minute break, and then I'll come back to do that. So if you have any interest, if you want to do that, if you want to sit and chat about video games, about more D&D stuff, whatever you want to chat about, like, that's one of my favorite things about doing a nice chill game on Fridays, is it really serves as like a good vessel for just, you know, sitting around making small talk and having fun chatting as a nice chill way to enter the weekend. So if you want to do that, feel free. If not, I totally understand. It's a very different stream than what we've been doing. So if you're wanting more of this type of content, there are a lot of other really cool creators out there that have a lot of good streams going on. So I will not be offended if you go looking for those. Either way, just to cap this off with a few different like plugs and farewells and all that kind of stuff. As always, I do have my Discord server. If you are interested in getting updated announcements about what's happening with streams, if I have to cancel a stream on a given day, if I have to change the time, anything like that, my Discord server is the place where I'm most likely to remember to put those updates. Additionally, it's just a small community, growing community, of different people, particularly interested in D&D, who like having a community to share ideas, discuss ideas, share resources, all that kind of stuff. It's a fun little community to talk about these things, so you can kind of get some feedback if you're working on something, give feedback if other people are working on stuff. It's a cool community. It's been fun for me to sort of establish and grow this, and if you want to be part of it, you are more than welcome. I don't care who you are, you're welcome. So go ahead and check the link out to that if you're interested. You can find that on my Twitch page. The other link on my Twitch page is to my YouTube channel, which is where I put all of the VODs for my streams. So if you want to go back and see any other parts of my writing process, if you want to see, I'm starting to diversify and do more writing streams about different aspects of being a DM, such as creating homebrew rules and house rules and all that kind of stuff, how I go about actually kind of writing the lore and the history of my world. You can feel free to check that out too. I'm starting to add more streams about that. So if you want to go back and see into the backlog, that's a really good place for it. I'm also intending to start adding some more videos. You know, maybe there'll be little creative short videos that I make. Maybe it'll be how-tos on some of my house rules, so that way they're just in a very singular, identifiable form, rather than having to just try and remember what stream I talked about it and get to the right minute in that, because that would be impossible because of how many VODs I upload. I'm trying to do that kind of stuff with that, so hopefully it'll be an interesting channel. If you want to check any of that out, that resource is available to you as well. Again, you can find the link on my Twitch page. I think the only other announcement that's worth adding is that next week, the weekend is coming, which means no more streams this week. Next week, as of right now, I believe I should be streaming my normal schedule. I think I have 1 or 2 meetings, but I don't believe they interfere with streaming. I just always have to. I have a day job that actually pays the bills. I do the streaming just for fun because I love doing it. So naturally, the income has to come first, because I do have bills to pay and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes that gets in the way, but I don't think that's going to happen next week. I think next week I am free to go ahead and stream my usual schedule, which is Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, starting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time zone. That's when I start my writing streams, and then 1:30 is when I switch over to video games. So, yeah, I think that's all my announcements. That's all my announcements. So again, thank you so much to everyone who joined. I love doing this. It's so much fun. I love the questions that people ask. I love the ideas that people share. There's so many cool ideas out there, and that's why I love streaming this, so that we can just kind of talk about all these cool things. It's so much fun. So much fun. I have a blast doing it, and it's because all of you guys are really cool. I've got a really cool audience, and I really dig my audience. I really dig the people that follow me. I appreciate each and every one of you. It's a good time. So hopefully I will see you in a few minutes if you're interested. If not, I will probably see you next week when we get back to more writing. Either way, clearly I appreciate you guys. I can't say it enough. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, I hope you all have a good weekend. Take care of yourselves, and I will be back in a little bit.